My name is Maria Felisa Socorro Martin from the Training Department, and I am here to impart knowledge about sepsis education. As healthcare professionals, one of our main goals is to give valuable health education to our client. So I am here to discuss this topic for you to be able to provide sepsis awareness with our patients. The general objective of this presentation is to raise awareness and deepen the understanding of sepsis among individuals. It aims to provide clear and essential information about what sepsis is, its causes, warning signs, prevention strategies, and available treatment. The objective is to inspire proactive health behavior and promote a stronger, more informed community when it comes to sepsis awareness and response. Now, the specific objectives. It is to inform the audience about what sepsis is and how it affects the body. Understanding its cause and impacts help individuals recognize the seriousness of the condition. Second, is to identify the signs and symptoms that indicate the onset of sepsis and when to seek medical help. Recognizing early symptoms is vital because sepsis progresses quickly. Prompt assessment and medical response can significantly increase the chance of survival and prevent permanent damage to the body. Next is to promote preventive measures to reduce the risk of sepsis. Promoting healthy habits not only protects individuals but also contributes to public health and safety. Next is to have knowledge on how sepsis is being treated. Remember, if sepsis is left untreated, it can quickly damage organs such as the hearts, lungs, kidneys, and liver, leading to serious complications or even death. And last, to learn the long-term effect of sepsis. Most people make full recovery from sepsis, but some people with sepsis will experience long-term physical and psychological problems. So now, let us discuss what is sepsis. Sepsis is a life-threatening medical condition that occurs when the body has an extreme response to an infection. Instead of fighting the infection in a controlled way, the immune system overacts and begins to damage the body's own tissues and organs. Sepsis is often misunderstood or mistaken for a simple infection, which makes it even more dangerous when left undetected. It can start from common infections like pneumonia, urinary tract infections or skin infections, or even a small wound. When sepsis develops, it can lead to organ failure, shock, and even death if not treated quickly and properly. Anyone can get sepsis, but it is most dangerous to infants, the elderly, the people with weakened immune systems, and those with chronic illnesses. Recognizing sepsis early and getting immediate medical care is crucial to improving outcomes and saving lives. So now, how can we prevent sepsis? Firstly, is getting vaccinated. It is a critical step in preventing sepsis because many cases of sepsis begins with the infection that are actually preventable. Vaccines work by preparing the body's immune system to fight off certain bacteria and viruses before they can cause serious illness. By avoiding these initial infections, the risk of them progressing to sepsis is greatly reduced. For example, infections like pneumonia, influenza, meningitis, and COVID-19 are common triggers of sepsis. Vaccines for these diseases are widely available and strongly recommended, especially for high-risk groups like infants, older adults, and people with chronic illnesses, and those with weakened immune system. These individuals are more likely to develop severe infection that may lead to sepsis if not prevented or treated early. Vaccinations not only promote the person who receives it, but also contributes to community or herd immunity, reducing the overall spread of infection and lowering the chances that vulnerable individuals will be exposed. In the context of sepsis, This is extremely important because early prevention through vaccines can mean the difference between life and death. In short, vaccination is not just a tool to avoid disease. It's a life-saving strategy that plays a direct role in stopping infections before they escalate into sepsis. Second is practicing good hygiene. It is a simple but powerful way to prevent infections that can lead to sepsis. Sepsis often begins with a bacterial, viral, or fungal infection, many of which can be avoided through proper hygiene habits in daily life. By keeping the body and the surroundings clean, we reduce the risk of harmful germs entering the body and causing illness. One of the most effective hygiene practices is regular hand washing with soap and water. This helps prevent the spread of bacteria and viruses, especially after using the bathroom, before eating, after touching dirty surfaces, or even caring for someone who is sick. In situations where soap and water are not available, using an alcohol-based hand sanitizer is also helpful. Keeping wounds clean and covered is essential. Even small cuts, scrapes, or burns can become infected if not properly cleaned and protected. And these minor infections can sometimes develop into sepsis if left untreated. Personal hygiene such as bathing regularly, wearing clean clothes, also help reduce the risk of skin infections. Maintaining a clean environment at home, in school, and in healthcare settings further minimizes the chance of infection. Cleaning commonly touched surfaces and avoiding contact with people who are sick can also help protect against contagious diseases that may lead to serious complications like sepsis. Good hygiene is a first line of defense against infection. And by preventing infection in the first place, we also prevent the possibility of sepsis. It's a simple habit that has the power to save lives. Lastly, taking antibiotics as prescribed. It is essential to ensure effective treatment and prevent serious health risks. When antibiotics are prescribed for a bacterial infection, it is critical to follow the exact dosage, timing, and duration specified by your healthcare provider. Completing the full course of treatment, even if the symptom improves, ensure that all bacteria are eradicated, reducing the risk of relapse or the infection spreading to the bloodstream, which could trigger life-threatening conditions like sepsis. Skipping doses, stopping early, or adjusting the regimen allows surviving bacteria to adapt and develop antibiotic resistance, making future infections harder to treat. For example, stopping a 10-day antibiotic course after 5 days because you feel better might leave behind resilient bacteria that multiply, potentially leading to a more severe drug-resistant infection. Additionally, improper antibiotic use, sharing pills, or saving leftovers contribute to the global crisis of antibiotic-resistant superbugs, which threatens public health by limiting treatment options. By adhering to prescriptions, you protect not only your own recovery, but also help preserve antibiotics' effectiveness for others. Always consult your doctor if you experience side effects or difficulties following the regimen. They can always adjust your plan safely. Responsible antibiotic use is a cornerstone of preventing complication, safeguarding long-term health, and combating the rise of untreatable infections. Let's go to the warning signs of sepsis. So the first is fever. Fever is a temperature between 100 degrees Fahrenheit to 101.4 degrees Fahrenheit. Sepsis disrupts the body's ability to regulate temperature due to systemic inflammation. A fever occurs when immune cells release pathogens to combat infections, but in sepsis, this response becomes excessive and harmful. Hypothermia develops when inflammation damages the hypothalamus, the brain's temperature control system. This dysregulation impairs enzyme functions and oxygen delivery, accelerating organ dysfunction. For example, a sepsis patient with hypothermia may progress to septic shock faster due to metabolic collapse. Both extremes signal a loss of homeostasis, a hallmark of sepsis severity. Immediate medical intervention is critical to restore balance and prevent irreversible damage. Next is fast heartbeat or tachycardia. Sepsis-induced inflammation dilates blood vessels, causing fluid leakage and reduced blood pressure. To compensate, the heart pumps faster, greater than 90 beats per minute, to maintain oxygen delivery to the vital organs. Persistent tachycardia strains cardiac muscles, increasing the risk of heart failure in later sepsis stages. This symptom reflects the body's desperate attempt to counteract poor perfusion caused by septic vasculopathy. For instance, a sepsis patient with a heart rate of 120 beats per minute likely has significant blood volume loss to tissues. Without fluids and vasopressors, the heart's compensatory mechanism will fail, leading to a circulatory collapse. Monitoring heart rate is essential for early sepsis detection and hemodynamic stabilization. Third is feeling cold or shivering. Chills in sepsis stems from cytokine storms. It is a massive release of inflammatory molecules like interleukin-1 and TNF-alpha. These molecules reset the brain's thermostat, triggering shivering to generate heat for fever. Severe uncontrolled shivering indicates bacteremia, where bacteria invade the bloodstream and amplify the inflammation. For example, a patient with sepsis from an infected surgical wound may experience violent chills as pathogens spread systematically. This symptom signals escalating immune activation, which damage endothelial cells and promote clotting abnormalities. Ignoring chills delays diagnosis, allowing sepsis to advance to a multi-organ failure. So, next is feeling extremely tired. Sepsis hijacks cellular metabolism, forcing a shift to anaerobic respiration due to poor oxygen delivery. Lactic acid builds up, causing the muscle fatigue and profound weakness. Patient may struggle to breathe or move as muscles, including the diaphragm, become energy deprived. For example, a sepsis patient with respiratory muscle weakness may require mechanical ventilation to prevent respiratory failure. This fatigue also stems from the body diverting energy to sustain hyperimmune responses. Prolonged weakness delays recovery and increases complications like bed sores or pneumonia. Early mobilizations and nutritional support are vital to mitigate this effect. Next is foggy thinking. Sepsis reduces cerebral blood flow and disrupts the blood-brain barrier, allowing inflammatory cytokines to directly affect neural tissue. Patient may experience delirium, agitation, or sudden memory loss, even without prior cognitive issues. For instance, an elderly sepsis patient with UTI-related bacteremia might abruptly become disoriented or nonverbal. This encephalopathy worsens the metabolic imbalances, like hypoglycemia or hyponatremia, which is common in sepsis. Untreated, it progresses to coma or permanent brain damage. Mental status changes are critical red flag for clinicians to escalate care. Last is a burning during urination. These symptoms often indicate a urinary tract infection, one of the most common sepsis triggers. Bacteria like E. coli ascends from the bladder to the kidneys, entering to the bloodstream. For example, a diabetic patient with UTI may ignore burning urination until bacteria invades the bloodstream, causing sepsis. Cloudy urine reflects pyuria, a sign of severe inflammation. Delaying antibiotic allows pathogens to multiply, increasing the risk of septic shock. Early UTI treatment is key to preventing urosepsis. Now we have the red zones, or what we call the emergency signs of sepsis. So what are these? First is very weak or sick. Sepsis describes a state of profound physical and mental debilitation caused by the body's overwhelming response to infection. This is not ordinary tiredness, but a severe systemic collapse where the body can no longer sustain basic functions. Systemic inflammation from sepsis disrupts cellular metabolism, starving muscles and organs of oxygen and nutrients, which leads to extreme weakness, which patient may struggle to move, speak, or even stay conscious. Next is the rapid heart rate. A heart rate of above 130 beats per minute and breathing of above 30 breaths per minute indicate compensatory efforts to oxygenate tissues. Tachycardia arises from systemic vasodilation and reduced cardiac output. Tachypnea compensates for lactic acidosis caused by the anaerobic metabolism. These signs warn of impending cardiovascular or respiratory collapse without urgent intervention. Now we have severe shortness of breath. Labored breathing suggests acute respiratory distress syndrome from lung inflammation and fluid leakage. Hypoxia, which is an oxygen saturation of less than 90%, exacerbates organ failure by starving tissues of oxygen. Mechanical ventilation is often required to maintain adequate gas exchange. Delayed treatment risks permanent lung damage or death. Next is the high fever or low body temperature. A fever of above 103 degrees Fahrenheit or hypothermia with a temperature below 95 degrees Fahrenheit indicates hypothalamic dysfunction due to sepsis. Extreme temperature disrupts enzymatic process and cellular energy production. This dysregulation accelerates multi-organ failure. Aggressive warming or cooling alongside with antibiotic is vital to restore homeostasis. Next is a pale or bluish skin. Pale, mottled, or bluish skin reflects severe hypoperfusion as blood shunts to vital organs. Cold, clammy extremities signal vasoconstriction from deplementing blood pressure. This appearance often accompanies septic shock, where fluid resuscitation fails to stabilize circulation. Immediate vasopressors and ICU care are critical to prevent irreversible organ damage. Next is confusion or disorientation. Confusion or unresponsiveness stems from cerebral hypoperfusion and neurotoxic inflammation. Sepsis disrupts the blood-brain barrier, allowing cytokines to impair neural function. Mental decline correlates with higher mortality risk, so rapid neurological assessment and hemodynamic stabilizations are priority. Lastly, extreme pain. Severe pain indicates ischemic tissue or organ perforation from sepsis. Gut ischemia or gangrene releases toxins that amplify systemic inflammation. Emergency surgery may be required to remove necrotic tissue. Remember, unmanaged pain accelerates shock and mortality. Let's proceed to the treatment for sepsis. The main treatment will be, first is antibiotic. Sepsis demands immediate broad-spectrum antibiotics like vancomycin and Zosyn, to target unknown pathogens. These drugs disrupt bacterial cell walls or protein synthesis, halting infection spread. Therapy is suggested once culture identify the specific bacteria or fungus. Delays increase mortality due to unchecked toxins released and organ damage. Next is IV fluids and oxygen. Sepsis causes fluid leakage from blood vessel, leading to hypovolemia and shock. Rapid IV crystalloids restore blood volume and blood pressure. Fluids counteract lactic acidosis by improving tissue perfusions. But overhydration is avoided in heart and kidney failure patients to prevent pulmonary edema. Lastly is we support the vital organs. Vasopressors are used to constrict blood vessels to prioritize blood flow to the heart, brain, and kidney. Dialysis is often used to filter toxins and manage fluid overload in sepsis-induced kidney failure. Inotropes boost heart contractility in septic cardiomyopathy, and source control removes infection foci to halt pathogen spread. So there are some people who doesn't recover to sepsis immediately. So there will be some long-term effects of sepsis. So these long-term effects includes memory and thinking issues. Sepsis triggers neuroinflammation and hypoxia, which means oxygen deprivation, damaging brain regions responsible for memory and executive function. Survivors may develop post-sepsis encephalopathy, manifesting as brain fog, difficulty concentrating, or short-term memory loss. Studies link sepsis to a 3 times higher risk of dementia due to blood-brain barrier disruption and amyloid plaque buildup. Cognitive rehab and neuropsychiatric support are often needed for recovery. Next is mobility problem. Prolonged ICU stays and muscle wasting. Those patients with critical illness myopathy lead to severe weakness and joint stiffness. Peripheral neuropathy or nerve damage from inflammation or medication can cause chronic pain or balance issues. For example, survivors may require walkers or months of physical therapy to regain basic mobility. Fatigue from post-sepsis syndrome further limits daily activity. Lastly, loss of limbs or organ. Sepsis-induced hypoperfusion and clotting disorders can cause irreversible tissue death, leading to limb amputation if extremities becomes gangrenous. Organ failure from prolonged ischemia or infection may necessitate surgical removal, such as necrotic bowel or spleen. Survivors often face lifelong disabilities like dialysis dependence after kidney loss or prosthetic adaptation post-amputation. These physical consequences underscore sepsis' potential for permanent and life-altering damage. In conclusion, sepsis is a life-threatening medical emergency that demands rapid recognition and immediate treatment. As we've seen, early identification of symptoms is important. It is crucial for both healthcare professional and general public to stay informed about the signs and risks of sepsis. So, by this lecture, I hope we can promote awareness, advocate for timely care, and support continued research so that we can reduce the devastating impact of sepsis worldwide. Remember, when it comes to sepsis, every second counts. Thank you for your time and attention.